Hi, this is Adrian Vandenberg, all the way from Holland. You're listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hello everyone, it's Rodrigo here, bringing you another interview for Sonic Perspectives. Our guest today released his first of many solo albums in 1982 and eventually joined Whitesnake in 1987. Since the 90s, he's had many bands and re-established himself with the band Vandenberg. I'm talking, of course, of Mr. Adrian Vandenberg. Adrian, great to have you here with us.
Likewise, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you have a new album called 2020 to be released later this month of May. Give us the details about the writing and recording of the album.
Well, there's a little bit of a story that leads into it. The last 5 years, I had my band Vandenberg's Moonkings, and we had a great period, made a couple of strong records and stuff, but the problem was the singer in Moonkings, he is a good friend of mine, but he's got a big farming company, and he couldn't leave the country for more than, say, 1 or 2 days, so we couldn't do any international touring.
Oh, wow.
Which made, and I really started missing that because, you know, I've been touring all over the world ever since '82, so that made me decide to put Moonkings on ice and put something new together. And when my manager suggested, why don't you call it Vandenberg? I said, well, no, I don't want it to be like a nostalgic type of thing, you know. And then I thought about it. I thought, well, you know, it could be interesting if I can find a amazing singer and put together a kick-ass lineup, then it would be interesting because then it would be like a brand new kick-ass band with a name that has a heritage. So that became, after a couple of days of brainstorming with my own brain, inside my own brain, that became the story, actually. And I went to Madrid, where Ronnie Romero lives, and whom I actually discovered, like a lot of people, because he also sings for Richie Blackmore's Rainbow.
Yeah.
But I knew that Richie only does like 3, 4, 5 shows every 2 years, so I assumed that Ronnie would have some time on his hands, which he did, you know. So then I found my awesome singer. So then everything else fell into place, and it made sense to start working on the name Vandenberg again after all those years.
Yeah, and well, it's unquestionable, of course, that what Ronnie brings to the table, and it's great that you wrote the songs already for his style, as opposed to him coming on board later to do those tracks, right?
Well, actually, I had a couple of riffs, but as soon as I always like to write my music tailored to the singer. So when I came back from the first meeting in Madrid, I immediately started making songs out of a couple of riffs that I had, and came up with new riffs. And because I really want to make a singer shine on the album, because that's what translates. And I usually tailor my guitar solos, for instance, to the story that a singer tells. You know, which is actually one of the reasons why I still have sometimes a hard time dealing with otherwise great guitar solos from great players, but when the singer tells his story, so to speak, in a song, and suddenly the guitar solo comes up and it goes, that's a totally different world for me, you know. So I like to hear the vocal performance first, and then I get in the vibe with my guitar stuff.
Right. Oh, I think the end result of this album does reflect that, in my opinion, at least.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the choice of Randy on bass and Koen on drums as well.
That was interesting because obviously it would make most sense if I could get a Dutch lineup together outside of Ronnie, because Ronnie lives abroad, and that's already got some consequences in the routing and you know, whatever, when we want to get together for photo sessions and rehearsals and all that stuff. But at the same time, I never really keep an eye on what's going on in the Dutch rock scene, because usually it's not that interesting to me. I got a little spoiled, you know, working with Whitesnake for 13 years and stuff, and so I didn't really keep an eye on it. But so I decided to take a look in the leading Dutch drummer magazine. I knew they have a yearly top 10 of drummers that have been voted by their peer drummers as being, the guys in a certain area. So you got your jazz drummer, you got your funk drummer, you got your rock drummer, and I decided to take a look. And then Koen, he already won. He was already voted best rock drummer in Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg for 7 years straight. So I thought, that guy's got to be good, So I looked him up on YouTube and was blown away by his playing. So I thought, if he's available, that's the guy. And I called him up. We didn't know each other, and he was ecstatic because he said, "Well, man, I've been waiting for something like this for years, but there's so few bands that manage to get out of Holland and play on, like a world-class level, which he does, and he's aware of it, because he's not stupid." So that was great. And Randy was actually recommended to me by a very well-known Dutch rock player who decided to spend the rest of his life teaching at a rock academy, so to speak. So, something like GIT or comparable to that. And he said, "Well, I got the perfect guy for you." And Randy's 27 years old, but his favorite bands are Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Rainbow, all the stuff that fits perfectly with what I wanted to do. So it came together in a very organic way, so to speak.
You have a few special guests on the album as well, Rudy Sarzo and Brian Tichy, who were your former bandmates in Whitesnake.
Exactly, yeah. What happened was the studio was already booked because we really needed to record that album in January in order to get it out in May. So I didn't have the lineup together yet, so I called up Rudy and Brian, knowing that they're fantastic players and they're good friends, and they reacted very enthusiastic. And they said, "Oh, great, we'll play on the album, fantastic." And because Rudy and I haven't been together on an album since 1994, quite a while ago, when we were still young and handsome, and now we're just handsome. But and when I suddenly unexpectedly found Koen and Randy, I got in touch with Rudy and Brian, and they were happy to guest on the album, on 2 tracks. So it worked out great for everybody.
Right. And the album was recorded with Bob Marlette as a producer. Tell me about the choice of him doing the album and what did he bring to the table this time?
My manager and I and the record company, we discussed the upcoming record, and the three of us simultaneously thought it would be a good idea to work with a producer this time, because I've been producing my own records for ages. And at one point, I realized it would be interesting to have like a fresh pair of ears, so to speak, somebody who looks at it objectively without having written the songs. And the good thing is, what I usually do, I prepare myself very well, and I make very extensive demos. So I don't want to run the risk of not to fool myself by thinking possibly, it's going to be great once it's recorded in a studio. That's a mistake I made a very long time ago, and I promised myself I would never do that anymore. So I sent the demos to Bob. Bob was actually one of the 3 guys that my record company Mascot suggested when we decided, it could be interesting to look into an American producer. And also, I was looking really forward to record in the States again, because it's been a while. The Moonkings records, I recorded them in Holland. And it's a different vibe, for me, it's really exciting to be back in the States, because I had that whole 13 years with Whitesnake was a blast, of course. And it's a different kind of inspiration, a different kind of electricity in the air and all that stuff, So Bob was one of the 3 guys that got recommended, and he was the first one I talked to on the phone, and we had an immediate connection, and we were exactly on the same track as far as what we thought this album should be like, And so it was a very natural thing. We went to LA and recorded the album in 2.5 weeks, and just the way it should be, the idea was to make it sound, to have it sound like you're at like a great band rehearsal right in front of the little stage where everything is loud, you can hear everything clearly, and if you close your eyes, you see the band. That was the idea, and not overproduce it with layers of keyboards and layers of guitars and all that stuff,
Yeah. Oh, it does show. I think for me, as a longtime fan, it's a dream come true for any hard rock fan. It's like a perfect mix of Rainbow and Whitesnake. So I'm in heaven listening to this album. Yeah.
Great. That's the funny thing. When Ronnie and I first got together, one of the first things we talked about how special it is that he's got this connection with Rainbow, and I've got my 13 years with Whitesnake, and before that Vandenberg. So we realized that it was going to be, like a logical mix of the three.
Yeah.
And it ended up being like that. That's the reaction of a lot of people who hear it. And at the same time, I really wanted to sound like 2020, not like woolly, like it used to do early on. I really wanted to have it sound crisp and fresh and in your face, like records from these days.
Yeah. Well, one thing that caught my attention is that you re-recorded Burning Heart, which was one of your hits before you joined Whitesnake. Tell us about the decision to update that track for 2020.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, the way it ended up on the album, because I didn't mean it to, but the record company and my manager convinced me to. What happened was about 4 or 5 months ago, a press release got launched into the world, and my manager said, well, there's so many press releases these days, it's a much stronger message when there's some music with it, but we hadn't been into the studio yet. So, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute, 2 years ago, I recorded the basic tracks with a Moonkings bass player and drummer. So we did have those, and all I had to do basically is finish the guitars and have Ronnie sing on it, which was a piece of cake. It was easy. And so we had that to put out with the press release. And then when we finished the recordings, everybody was so enthusiastic about the Burning Heart re-recording that they suggested, why don't we put it on the album? And I thought about it, basically realized that it would be such a nice symbolic bridge between 1982, when it was on the first Vandenberg album and it became a hit in the United States and a lot of other countries, and build that bridge between 1982 and 2020. And when I heard it in between the other songs, funny enough, it made total sense, because it apparently is quite timeless, because it sounds like we could have recorded it now,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It fits in. So it was nice.
Yeah, it does blend in well with the rest of the song. But tell me about the first single, Shadows of the Night. I think it's such a great starter for the album. It captures the essence of the 80s hard rock perfectly as well.
Yeah, thanks. I was kind of hoping for that. You got this idea in your head, and you write a song, and I demo it and stuff. And then once Ronnie put a guide vocal in it on the first demo, I thought, oh man, this is going to be great. So, and it's like, you kick in the door, and as a first track of the album, it's like you said, it's got all the elements in it that make this band so exciting to me. And it's got this mixture of Rainbow, Whitesnake, and Vandenberg, and then sounding like it should sound now, 2020, in your face and crisp and clear and stuff. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
I imagine this one will be the opening song on the live shows when those happen, right?
Yeah. You could very well be right. I was torn between this one and Light Up the Sky. That could be a good one too.
Oh yeah.
Especially because of the lyrics. But yeah, right now there's a European tour planned for November, December. But of course, we're not sure whether by that time we can still do that stuff. And otherwise, plan B would be to start touring in February.
Okay.
So in the coming month, I have enough time to start writing the next album already, and we can follow it up pretty quickly then,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Well, another one that has a positive vibe, a positive message is Freight Train, which is, I think it's about reaching your goals and stopping at nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
I love that
and
track.
That's the story. Yeah, me too. I play it very often as first thing in the morning, make my espresso and a Freight Train on, and bam, I'm ready for the day, It's
nice.
It feels pretty motivational.
Yeah. And of all the songs in the album, I'd say Hell or High Water, to me, is the one with the strongest Whitesnake vibe. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that one turned out as probably the most perfect Rainbow and Whitesnake blend, especially because of the way Ronnie sings it, with the intensity he sings it, the heavy riff and all that stuff. And it's pretty epic, with the end section that keeps going and building up and stuff. Yeah. It's definitely one of my favorite songs, and it turned out exactly the way I hoped it was gonna turn out. So yeah, I'm really excited. I can't wait for everybody to hear it.
Yeah, it should come up in a couple of weeks, and I bet it's going to cause a storm, man. I hope so,
I
at
hope
least.
so. I hope so.
Yeah.
It would be nice, especially all the people who have been whining about, oh, rock is dead, rock is dead. Well, I haven't seen rock dying anywhere. The fans are always there, and they just don't get served like they used to in the 80s.
Yeah.
On MTV and radio and stuff, but they're all there, like the last couple of years when we played the Moonkings on some big festivals here and there. There's like 60, 70, 80,000 people show up, They're all there. They're just waiting to get another bite.
Absolutely, yeah. And I read somewhere that you still use your Gibson Les Paul from the old days to write and record. What kind of
Yeah.
guitar and amp combination did you use for this album in particular?
Well, this particular Les Paul, I bought it brand new in 1980, and it's been
Wow.
with me ever since, actually inseparable, because it's the first thing, when I play it on stage, the first thing that my guitar tech puts in the case and brings it straight to the dressing room. So no risk of losing it. It's just I do have other Les Pauls that sound just as good, but this one I've got this connection with that musicians know what I'm talking about. When you've gone through so much stuff with one instrument, with your main instrument, then you have an almost human connection with it. And I'm looking at it right now, and it's amazing, because when I bought it in 1980, it was brand new. It was like a limited series that Gibson put out of the first series where they wanted to put out like a reissue of the Holy Grail of Gibson Les Pauls from 1959, and it looks exactly like it, and it sounds fantastic. And I saved money by working in the factory and stuff, and doing little jobs here and there. And so it's been with me ever since. And I recorded all the Vandenberg's albums with it, just this guitar. And right now, the same thing, just this guitar, for this Vandenberg album, and my Marshall amps. And actually, in the studio, the Marshall amps got combined with a Bogner amp as well, which is basically a Marshall, so.
Nice. I can definitely agree with you that there's, the instruments captured the history of what they went through the years.
Yeah.
The connections you made, who you
yeah.
played with, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like you pick it up, and it's like, the way it should be. You kind of grow together, kind of, as weird as it may sound to people who think it's a piece of wood with a couple of strings over it, which it is, but. Yeah, the connection is just great, and it's inspiring, to do. And I'm looking at it right now, and I go, man, who would have thought, when I bought it at the time? I thought, in a couple of years I'm going to be an art teacher at some school or whatever, and now I'm here still not having learned anything, because I'm still making the same music that I started making when I was 14.
That's one way of looking at it, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious about one particular song. There's an effect on shout. You seem to use a flanger in the verses of shout. I kept waiting for the flanger to come back in the solo for that song, but it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Can you comment on that choice?
Yeah. It was. I thought it was cool to do in the verses, and then have a different vibe in the choruses or in the solo, whatever. It worked out nice. And it goes with it almost cleanish arpeggio that I'm playing there. Actually, the song that I wrote the quickest out of all of them, because at the very last moment before we went into the studio, I thought I'm missing one particular tempo that would go down great live. The pounding rhythm, and I actually had the riff laying around for a couple of weeks, and I thought, am I going to do something with it or not? And every time when I listened to it on my iPhone, I thought, it's a pretty good riff. I should do something with it. So at the very last moment, a couple of days before I flew to the United States, I put the song together. And funny enough, it's one of Ronnie's favorites. And I can imagine why, because it's one of those songs where he really shines, He's got this bluesy way of singing it in the verses, almost reminding of Coverdale in his best years, And then he starts barking in the choruses. It's just like a thing, We were really tempted. Breakdown after the solo to sing with a bunch of guys, the shout, type of thing. But in the end, we decided it would be on the verge of being a little bit too cheesy, So
okay,
we're going to leave it to the crowd when we do the song live.
Oh yeah, like you said, there's that color and response thing towards the end that goes down great on a live setting. So
yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear the people screaming,
Yeah, it should sound amazing live. Yeah. And you mentioned about rock not being dead. I think even with Moonkings, you guys were on a roll, like you said. And you look at other acts from Europe, like Eclipse, Hartman, Pretty Maids, and
Yeah.
Vandenberg now. Yeah, I think hard rock is alive and kicking in Europe, while in America the crowds are sometimes getting smaller. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I don't know. I can imagine that it has a lot to do with the fact that it's not getting a lot of attention or hardly any, only on the specialized rock stations, of course.
Yeah,
But what I've seen in the States lately, actually, is that it seems that a lot of bands are getting back together, and there's a couple of more and more great package tours that were planned for this summer, but of course they didn't get through. But bands like Dokken and Whitesnake, Foreigner, Def Leppard is still touring. Europe is touring, especially in Europe.
yeah,
What's in the name? But yeah, there's a lot of great packages that apparently still fill arenas, up to 15, 20,000 people. So I don't know. It seems to me that there's some kind of a resurgence going on the last 2 or 3 years.
yeah.
But I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not there, but I try to follow everything as much as possible on the web, see what's going on. And there's a lot of great records coming out, of bands from that era. So I don't know, I think it's a matter of doing it, I suppose. And this summer was the perfect summer for it. But yeah, then
Then all
our
these
new
things
friend
happen.
Corona
Yeah.
spoiled it all.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, speaking of other bands, I interviewed Ron Young from Little Caesar a while ago.
Oh, cool.
He speaks very fondly of the band you guys had together, Manic Eden.
Yeah.
Why do you think you guys lasted only one album?
Well, what happened was, and that was one of the most difficult choices I ever had to make in my whole career. We made that album. We had touring plans. It was a weird period because it was right in the middle of the grunge period, of course. But we
Yeah.
were pretty confident. And what happened was, Coverdale was going to tour with Jimmy Page, and then apparently Jimmy Page had enough of it after 3 Japanese gigs, so they didn't go on a world tour. And David called me up like right before that Manic Eden European tour was finalized, and he said, "Well, I really want to move on with Whitesnake again." And I was quite surprised, of course. And it was a tough decision because I thought about it, and I thought if I'm not going to do Whitesnake, then I would have been in the, a member for 6-7 years in the glory period of Whitesnake, and I would never have played an album because I had this wrist problem during the 1990 recording of Slip of the Tongue. And I thought, man, I'm never going to forgive myself if I'm going to leave it like this, without having played on an album. So that was the difficult decision, and I really hated to do that because I think it's a great album. And as a matter of fact, there's talk about it, about re-releasing it right now through Mascot Records, which fits perfectly in their roster with all the blues rock, Joe Bonamassa stuff, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
that could be interesting. And who knows what happens? Because I do get a lot of questions about it.
Hmm.
So many people who hear like 1 or 2 songs of it and want to get the album, but it's not available anymore. So
Yeah.
it would be a good thing. It would be great.
Well, I hope it happens. But then you made that decision. You did the Restless Heart album, I think, with Whitesnake, and you did the Starkers in Tokyo, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, what were your thoughts when Coverdale decided to stop all Whitesnake activities at the time?
Well, I thought, it was a good moment to do that. I really started missing my painting,
Mm.
so I thought I'm going to have a couple of years to to catch up with my painting. But like John Lennon said, life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. That's exactly what happened to me because
Mm.
in 1999, my then girlfriend and me got a baby daughter. And 3 years later, classic, because I had been touring during our whole relationship. Classic, you find out the relationship wasn't what we hoped for. So
Hmm.
I had to break up that relationship. And the hard thing was, as people can imagine, there was this little girl, 3 years old, involved. So I thought, if I'm going to tour now and put a band together, I'm going to be one of those dads who sticks his head around the corner twice a year and goes, "Hey, I'm your dad, but sorry, I'm going to have to go again."
Hmm.
I didn't want to do that, so I decided it would be better if I would wait until I could explain to my daughter what my job was, and what my work and my passion was. But when she was 5 or 6, it was still too early, I realized, because she didn't really have a clue at that age, So in the end, I waited until she was 12 or 13 when I put the Moonkings together. And she really liked it, you know. She went with me every once in a while when I play a festival or something. And right now she's 21, you know. She's actually in love with a guy from LA. So yeah, she's a big girl now, and she loves it. You know, she likes the kind of business, the music business, and the movie business. So she's studying.
Nice.
She's studying social media management right now. So she's gonna end up in somewhere related to what I'm doing.
Oh, I understand. Yeah. Oh, it's a good way to mix the family life with the business side of things. I hope.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, going back to the new album 2020, I think it's incredibly brave of you guys to release an album while the world is still in lockdown. And I hope it
Yeah.
gives some relief to everybody, every rock and metal fan in these tough times. Can we expect some kind of interaction between the band and the fans, like a live broadcast of some kind, or?
We're kind of making plans this far. What I've been doing is every time when we release a song to talk a little bit about it on our web pages, you know, vandenbergband.com, and on Instagram, Vandenberg Band. And we had an introduction of the drummer and the bass player, and we put little stuff on there. The videos are going to be on there. And right now we're thinking about, you know, finding a way to do something together, whether it's a band introduction or whether it's something playing, you know. So we're going to try to figure something out. In the beginning, nobody knew how long it was going to last. So right now, it looks like it's still going to last a while. So we might as well figure something out.
Yeah, like you said, you have shows booked for November and December, but what is the dialogue with promoters these days? Is there any like semi-official confirmation, any news on the horizon? And do you talk to them directly, or is that through an agent? Or?
Yeah, my manager is in daily contact with our British agency, and they're putting together this European tour in November, December, and next year I'm sure we're going to come to the States. We had a couple of offers already, so like you said, you know, it's kind of hard to pinpoint times right now, but it looks like everybody's pretty convinced that by next year, you know, everybody is going to be touring and playing and doing shows again.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty sure that there will be medication and if necessary, vaccines or whatever, you know. So it's just trying to survive this year, you know.
Yeah. Fingers crossed that the
Fingers
vaccine
crossed, yeah.
will come soon enough. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I think so.
Well, thanks for your time, Adrian. This has been a pleasure. I hope we can get to see and hear the new songs live as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait. And we can't wait. Everybody's kind of antsy, you know, to get on the road with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, man. And all the best with the new album. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. I'll keep in touch.
Take care. Cheers.
Take care. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for listening. And I hope you enjoyed this interview with Adrian Vandenberg. You can listen to it also on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Also, please follow us on Twitter and Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's wrap it up with the song Freight Train from Vandenberg's new album 2020. Stay safe and see you next time.
Ignoring any stop signs. afraid.